chapter 1. This week's chapter is on valleys, vehicles, and victims in a camper and criminals cozy mystery. And remember, each book can be read as a standalone. Fall in Kentucky was probably my favorite. A cozy picture that no artist could ever capture on film or in a painting. The brilliant red hues of the red maples stood proud and tall next to the spectacular yellow and orange leaves of the sugar maples. But the sweet gum trees that lined the exterior of Happy Trail Campground were definitely among my favorites. The sweet gum was a show-off with its rich wine-colored yellow, oranges, reds, and purples, creating the perfect autumn atmosphere for all of my guests at Happy Trails Campground. They are going to love the bungalows, I sighed and brought the cup of steamy coffee to my lips. The communal campfire roared and warmed me from the early morning chill, which would soon burn up in the brilliant sunny day forecast of Normal, Kentucky, our little slice of heaven located deep in the woods of the Daniel Boone National Forest. They are going to be partying up more than enjoying the scenery. Dottie Swagger was always the cynical one of my little group of friends. She sat in the chair next to me. Her coffee was getting cold, but the cigarette dangling from the corner of her lip was lit. Bridal parties have one thing in mind, Dottie said through the smoke. With her hands, she removed the pink sponge curlers from her hair. I watched in amazement. I could never figure out how she could smoke and do her hair all at the same time. She put the curls in a drawstring bag nestled in her lap. Getting drunk, she finished, and then ran her hands along her short red hair. The finished product was a loose strand around her head, her usual look. Maybe not, I shrugged and took the last drink from my mug. Fill her up. Henry Bryan held up the stainless steel coffee pot that had been hanging over the campfire. Yes, I held my cup out to Henry and watched as my handyman of Happy Trails carefully filled my mug. Thank you, I said to him and met his signature wide smile that made his already big nose spread across his face, exposing 2 of his front teeth. You're welcome, Maybelline, he giggled when he said my name like my family did, which sometimes drove me crazy. May was how I preferred people to refer to me. Mae West was my name, and I was nothing like the actress. I just so happened I married to Paul West, yes, the Paul West, who had been convicted for a Ponzi scheme, bankrupting celebrities and nearly half of America. His criminal ways weren't limited to just the rich and famous. He also took money from the citizens of Normal and me. My lifestyle dramatically changed when all my assets were seized, and all of the campground, which wasn't much of a campground when I showed up in a beat-up camper van, which I fixed up and currently lived in. Fast forward to today. Paul West was murdered, and not by my hands, though I did fantasize about it. The Happy Trails Campground was a thriving part of the Daniel Boone National Forest, and we were about to have one of the biggest weekends I'd ever hosted. Honk, honk. The first few honks led to a long honk that didn't stop until the RV stopped right in front of the office, and a pile of girls fell out. I figured that's the bride. Dottie's right brow cocked when the girl in the white veil was the last to get out of the camper, or sash. The woman waved as if she were the Queen of England as she walked out of her RV. Her blonde hair hung perfectly straight and was cut at a perfect angle. She had the kind of cut you get from a very fancy salon, not like cuticles in town. I should know. I used to go to those upscale salons, and I couldn't help but gaze at the bride's hair. It glistened in the early afternoon sun. What gave it away? The veil or the sash that says bride spelled out in glitter? I joked and stood up to greet them. Come on, I told Dottie. She was the manager, and I needed her to come help wrangle the rowdy bunch. If this weekend goes well, we just have more than bridal parties. Oh, goody, she said with a flat voice. Her sarcasm didn't go unnoticed. Giggling and squealing is exactly why I decided to live deep in the woods. I'll go and add some extra wood to the porches. Henry filled up his thermos and took off the opposite direction of Dottie and me. You be nice, I warned Dottie. At times she could pull off a bless your heart in a rude kind of way that would make people do double take once they registered what she had said. I'm always nice. Dottie looked at me, then laughed. Whose leg was Dottie trying to pull? Not mine. Hi there, I greeted them with a smile and a snarling Dottie swaggered. I'm May. Welcome to Happy Trails. I'm owner and I live right here on the property. I found guests love to know I was just a camper away if they needed me. This is Dottie, the manager, and she also lives here. We have a full-time handyman that lives here too, so if we've got you covered if anything you need. The woman in a short-skirted pink suit from Chanel fanned her hand in front of her face after Dottie lit up her cigarette. This isn't a smoke-free community, the woman asked. I wondered whether she was the bride's or the groom's mother. Please, Dottie snapped. I didn't light it yet. Mom, the bride gushed. She took the sparkly clutch from underneath her armpit and literally smacked it into the chest of the woman next to her. The woman used one hand to take the clutch and the other to push the glasses back upon her nose. She had brown hair that hung past her thin shoulders, and she wore a pair of jeans and a green-colored shirt, flashing the outfit off with a pair of sneakers. She was the one who looked like she was actually going to be staying in the campground. It's outside and a campground. We are here, so you're going to have to accept the fact that Lewis and I are going to get married here, smoke or not. She turned to me. I'm Shay, the bride, in case you couldn't tell. That's Misty, my mother. Shay wiggled her shoulders. And these are my bridesmaids. Nice to meet y'all. I tried to keep smiling when I noticed all the bridesmaids' phones were capturing every second of Shay's big life moment. And who are you? Apparently this woman wasn't important. The other women were typing away on their phones, no doubt putting the moment on social media. Amy Hill, family secretary. Shay shrugged and buttoned up her lip. Amy and I exchanged pleasantries, and she had a planner hugged to her body and a pencil stuck in her ear. When will the men arrive? I asked. From the email correspondence I'd had with Shay, she'd mentioned that the girls would be driving in an RV before the men, who were also driving here in an RV. She said the arrangements were like their bachelorette and bachelor party on wheels. Not until much later this afternoon or even tonight, Shay clasped her hands together. Amy flipped her planner open and used her finger to scan down the page. They will be arriving precisely around 7-ish, Amy said. Shay rolled her eyes. Like I said, this afternoon or tonight. These two women definitely had a little tension between them. It's even more beautiful than I imagined, Shay said. The bridesmaids agreed, but the mother gave a little disgruntled moan. Then why don't I take you on a quick walking tour of the main part of the campground so you know exactly what's here, I suggested, and met with smiles all around except from the mother. The mom had a familiarity about her, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So I let it roll out of my mind. I gestured for all of them to follow me while Dottie went to the office to get the contracts for them to sign on their way back around. Dottie and I were a team. We worked great together like a well-oiled machine. It wasn't exactly like that when I first drove into Happy Trails, but that great friendship weren't built on sort of initial conflict, ignoring the mother's grumbles under her breath about how her fancy shoes weren't fit to walk on gravel. I started the tour. Some of the campers are people who actually call normal home and live here year-round. I gestured to a few of the campers as we walked down the gravel road that circled the big lake in the middle. There's one camper set up for rentals, so our guests don't have to haul in a camper or simply do without a camper. The campground offered something for everyone. I was pretty proud of how I've been able to bring the campground into black, purchased some beat-up Can-Ham campers and restored them to their original glory and added some wonderful cozy touches. Everyone has lake access. There is a pier on the other side where you can get in the paddle boats. The tiki hut over there will have some snacks and cocktails. I was cut off by a couple of the bridesmaids squealing about how they had to get a photo of them. You can swim in the lake. There are fish. We are a catch and release, but offer many different types of fish in our nightly cookouts. I wasn't sure if they were listening, but I told them how the guests walked around at night during supper time hours and sampled other campers' food by the campfire. This practice was a way of bringing community and something I thoroughly enjoyed. Oh, lost dog! Shay whined and pointed to the fluffy white ball of fur bolting towards us. Oh, she's not lost, I smiled. She's exactly where she needs to be. Fifi is my dog. Fifi wiggled and danced around all the women. She knew as if she did some sort of standing on her hind leg and using her front paws like she was begging. She'd garner a lot of attention. Fifi lived for attention. The desire was in her DNA and trained in her before I got her and ruined her to be a hillbilly campground dog. She had a very high pedigree until I babysat her for her original owner, and she ended up getting pregnant by a pug, of all breeds. That was what did it in for poor Fifi, and her owner didn't want her anymore since she was no longer able to show her for money. Good for me and Fifi because we were happy together, and I couldn't imagine life without her. She's very sweet, and you'll see her around, along with a hound dog who goes by the name of Chester. I glanced over at Hank Sharp's camper, which he was renting from me. Renting was a term I used loosely, since he was my boyfriend, and recently we just started using the love word, something I think that took us both by surprise. He's very sweet, too. I had to reel these women back in and finish our tour, or we would never make it in town for that tour. We rounded the road to the back of the campground at different offshoots. I had several concrete pads and hookups for campers who brought their own RVs and wanted to be surrounded by woods. This particular group wanted to show up in their own RV but stay in one of the bungalow cabins I had for rent. These are the bungalows. I gestured to the wooded area where you could barely see many bungalows' front porches. Bungalows 1 through 4 are for your group. I have the bridal party in bungalow 1, the bride's parents in bungalow 3. I handed the key to the bungalow to one of the bridesmaids who seemed to be the most responsible, though it was a toss-up. Thank you, Misty mouthed and took the key. I laughed. My feet are killing me, she said. Amy Hill rushed over to her side and took out a pair of more sensible shoes from the bag off her shoulder. I ignored her comment because I wanted so bad to tell Misty she wasn't dressed appropriately for a campground. But who was I to judge? I looked and acted exactly like her a couple of years ago. Bungalow 2 is for the groomsmen, and I figured you'd want to be next to them. I winked at Shay, who replied with a cute giggle. Bungalow 4 is for the groom's parents. Amy had opened up her planner and was vigorously writing things down. Nothing that had anything to do with the Moon women who was getting past her. You can't put them on the opposite end, could you? Misty questioned me with a hint of joking, but a lot of seriousness, making me pause. I'm joking. I'm sure your parents thought your husband wasn't good enough for their little girl. Well, my parents are dead and I'm not married. I probably shouldn't have said that, but I just blurted it out. Jealous of Shay? Jealous of how her mom lovingly doted on her? Yeah, all those. I still felt shortchanged in the parent department since my entire family had been killed in a house fire when I was in my early teens. Being put in Kentucky foster care system wasn't high on any girl's list. However, I did end up being adopted by Mary Elizabeth Moberly, who I just reestablished a relationship after years of me not keeping up with her. Another part of Paul West's saga that I'd put behind me was that Mary Elizabeth and Bobby Ray, my foster brother, called normal home. Anyways, I reeled in my feelings since this was a business deal and I needed them to feel as comfortable as I could since we were going into the winter months into the forest. Not many people had the skin to camp or hike when there was snow, and bitter temperatures bit at your toes. I've gotten all the goodies in there for you. Shay had sent some bridesmaids' gift and bought the spa baskets from me. They included locally made items along with nice white cotton robes, white slippers to match. I told Shay I'd take her group downtown so they could get a feel of the town and also take them to the wedding venue, the barn, at the old train station motel on the other side of Normal. It sounded so far, but it wasn't. Thank you, May, Shay squirmed with delight. You've been so amazing. My family thinks Lewis and I are crazy for getting married here, but we love the outdoors and the atmosphere. She twirled around, very aware all the girls pointed their phones at her and put her images on all their social media accounts. "Oh, Shay!" one of them yelled, and everyone gathered around her. "This has to go in High Society magazine shoot." High Society? I was familiar with the magazine. Who wasn't? "Yes," Shay wiggled her shoulder. "Daddy knows people." I was sure, but I'd almost swear I saw Amy Hill roll her eyes. Or it might have been the sunshine catching her glasses at the right angle. "Her father is Tom Moon from Moonbuck's Coffee," Misty smiled. "Misty Moon?" My oh crap meter went off. "Socialite Misty Moon?" "The one and only. Please don't tell anyone. I'm at a campground," she muttered under her breath as she leaned over. "Mom, this is Mae West." Shay sounded a lot like she knew me. "Paul and Mae West from Manhattan, the Hamptons. I read your story in the Times and I had to come out and help you. Come on." She got close to me and nudged me. "You can't tell me that you had no idea that Paul was scamming all of your friends." And that was how the Moons heard of Normal, Kentucky. And I had a feeling they were never going to forget their time here. Valleys, vehicles, and victims.